Ask anyone about the 12-inch MacBook, and the responses are usually polarized. It was easy to bag on its lackluster performance, expensive price tag, and a disappointing lack of ports. However, in retrospect, I think Apple got more right with this device than people are willing to give them credit for. And with rumors of it making a return over the next 2 years, now might be its time to shine. 7 years ago, in 2015, Apple released the 12-inch MacBook. It became their thinnest laptop, besting the classic wedge-shaped second-generation MacBook Air, which dominated the market. Bloggers and tech journals loved the Air. College students bought the out of it. It was the laptop to buy for casual use and light productivity, with its consistent software experience, excellent battery life, and portability. But when 2015 rolled around, the MacBook Air was becoming increasingly outdated, especially with its sub-1080p screen resolution at a time when other Macs went Retina. So with all of this pent-up desire to upgrade, when the 12-inch MacBook was eventually released, people sized it up to the Air. But this wasn't the comparison Apple had intended. Priced at $1,300, or $300 more than the base model Air, the 12-inch MacBook Pro was designed to be a more premium offering that slotted right below the MacBook Pro. However, intent doesn't always line up with public perception, and that can be said for a lot that Apple got wrong with this device. Probably the biggest point of chatter amongst critics was its singular USB-C port. It's easy to forget looking back at it from 2022, but Type-C is way more common now than it was in 2015. And the 12-inch MacBook was Apple's scapegoat that planted the seed of this new standard in people's minds. From Apple's point of view, they were selling USB-C as the one port to do it all.
The new USB Type-C connector is a single port for charging, video output, and data transfer.
But I think they hedged their bets on winning people over a little too quickly. People absolutely hated the idea of using dongles and hubs to get their basic peripherals hooked up. Again, these were the growing pains of a new I/O standard, and it took a few years for hardware competitors and accessories manufacturers to fully catch up. If not for the painful lack of ports, the keyboard also drew complaints from critics and early adopters. Key travel took a hit in the name of slimming the laptop's profile, depriving users of tactile feedback necessary to type with confidence. It was designed with these new butterfly switches, which were notoriously susceptible to failure. If small particles like dust or crumbs got under the keys, it was enough to incapacitate the keyboard and require a full swap. On the topic of repairs, they weren't easy nor cheap to do, with the 12-inch doubling down on irreparability. Then there's the laptop's price to performance, which was also a tough pill to swallow. Ultrabooks were already common in 2015, as a result of PC manufacturers trying to compete with the market dominance of that MacBook Air. Now, from experience daily driving it, the balance between battery life and power was fantastic, given Apple's ability to heavily optimize for their hardware. However, you really had to love the form factor to want to pony up the sticker price. Again, this laptop started at $1,300, which was also the same price as the base model 13-inch Retina MacBook Pro, which offered more power, more ports, similar battery life, and was honestly thin enough for most people. For me personally, the 12-inch MacBook size really made a difference. You see, I would love to carry around an iPad as my primary computer, on portability alone. But there's enough weirdness with iPadOS where much of my daily tasks either work more intuitively on a Mac or just require it altogether. When I first started working for Austin Evans, I actually daily drove a hand-me-down 12-inch MacBook for a few months.
Ken realized he f***ed up.
Beyond doing research for videos and typing up documents, where I was most impressed with it was editing in Final Cut Pro X, which took big advantage of Intel's quick sync encoding and decoding and just made the whole process smoother. While I wouldn't exactly recommend getting the 12-inch MacBook as a dedicated editing laptop, it did the job more than well in a pinch, which I couldn't really say for other Ultrabooks in that era. Plus, while MacBooks of the time were basically cut from the same cloth, I loved how sleek the 12-inch was. The proportions of the deck still worked functionally given its small surface area, even if the keyboard had to run edge to edge. And above all else, this laptop has aged in a way where it looks like it could be sold at retail even today. And on that note, I think current Apple is in a much better position to release a 12-inch MacBook. With Apple's bet on their in-house silicon paying off for their desktops and laptops, a new 12-inch MacBook with an M1, M2, or similar SoC could dramatically improve on what held the old one back. Some rumors suggest that it might actually materialize for 2023 or 24. So the question then is, where does it exactly slot in the Mac lineup? It might not be crazy to see the 12-inch running on older chips, such as the M1 or M2 when they're further down their cycle. In this scenario, I think Apple would have to nix the M1 MacBook Air, which is still on sale for $1,000. It's said that this is the most popular Mac, and I can't say that I'm surprised. It offers minimal trade-offs to the higher-end M1 MacBook Pro, but at a lower price tag. For Apple and its customers, the M1 Air is simply too good to get rid of at the moment, even in light of the more premium, more powerful, more expensive M2 MacBook Air. And this isn't even mentioning the rumors of a new 15-inch model on the way. With that in mind, it might only be a matter of time before we see the M1 Air's true replacement. We also have to consider the M1 iPad Pro, which is probably going to get refreshed sooner than later. If that device teeters on the edge of becoming a laptop competitor, short of putting macOS on an iPad Pro, a smaller, moderately powerful MacBook is a perfect midpoint for users that might be cross-shopping between these two classes of devices. Only time will tell what the 12-inch MacBook is gonna look like, but I think the potential gets me excited for what's on the horizon for the Mac. Apple has had really good momentum since the launch of M1. And I think an ultra-portable, entry-level MacBook will sell like hotcakes, as long as they make the right compromises and learn from past mistakes.